You are standing in a supermarket. Fluorescent lights buzz above your head. The shelves stretch in every direction. Fruit from 3 continents, meat wrapped in plastic, water that traveled through pipes from a reservoir you will never see. You grab what you need and leave. The whole thing takes 12 minutes. But your body does not know that. Your body thinks you are still out there, out in the open, scanning the horizon, reading the wind, watching for movement in the grass that should not be moving. Because for almost the entire story of your species, that is exactly what you were doing. And the journey that brought you from there to here, from a dusty plain in Africa to a fluorescent supermarket, is one of the most extraordinary migrations in the history of life on Earth. The real story of how ancient humans spread across the planet is far stranger, far more dangerous, and far more awe-inspiring than you have been led to believe. Start with the beginning. Not the beginning of civilization, not the beginning of farming or writing or cities. The real beginning. Around 300,000 years ago, in what is now East and South Africa, a creature emerged that looked remarkably like you. Same skull shape, same hands, same basic wiring. Homo sapiens, your direct ancestor. And for roughly the first 200,000 years of its existence, it barely moved. This is the part that surprises most people. The species that would eventually colonize every continent on Earth spent 2/3 of its entire existence confined to a single region. Why? The answer involves fire, drought, and a population crash so severe it nearly ended the human story before it began. Paleoanthropologist Curtis Marean, who has spent decades excavating sites along the South African coast, argues that a period of catastrophic climate change around 195,000 years ago reduced the global human population to perhaps just a few hundred individuals, possibly even fewer. Not thousands, not millions, hundreds. Your entire ancestral line squeezed down to a group small enough to fit in a single apartment building. The genetic evidence, studied extensively by population geneticist Sarah Tishkoff, confirms this bottleneck. Every human alive today descends from that tiny surviving group. Every language, every culture, every face you have ever seen carries the genetic signature of that near-extinction event. They survived on the coast, shellfish, marine resources, a relatively stable microclimate along the shore, while the interior of the continent baked and dried. And there they waited, evolving, developing, slowly accumulating the cognitive tools that would eventually change everything. Then something shifted. Around 70,000 years ago, the climate began to stabilize. Resources expanded. And a small group? Genetic evidence suggests it may have been as few as 1,000 to 2,000 individuals crossed out of Africa. Not in boats, not with maps, not with any plan beyond following food and water across a landscape that, at the time, looked nothing like it does today. Sea levels were lower. What is now open ocean was, in some places, walkable land. The Arabian Peninsula was greener. The route through what is now the Bab el-Mandeb Strait, at the southern tip of the Red Sea, may have been crossable on foot or by simple raft during periods of low sea level. They walked into a world that had never seen anything like them. Geneticist Svante Pääbo, whose work on ancient DNA earned him the Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine in 2022, has shown that as these early migrants moved through the Middle East, they encountered another human species, the Neanderthals, and they did not simply pass each other in the night. They interbred. If you are of non-African descent, somewhere between 1 and 4% of your DNA is Neanderthal. That is not a metaphor. Those are actual inherited sequences, sitting in your genome right now, that came from a different species of human that your ancestors met on a dark plain in the Middle East 60,000 years ago. From the Middle East, the migration split. One branch pushed east along the southern coast of Asia, moving faster than anyone expected, hugging coastlines, living on marine resources, reaching Australia perhaps 65,000 years ago. The Aboriginal Australians are the descendants of that first wave. Their ancestors crossed open ocean, real open ocean, not a land bridge, to reach a continent they could not have known existed. That crossing represents one of the most extraordinary feats of navigation in human prehistory, accomplished with no written knowledge, no metal tools, and no map of any kind. Another branch pushed north and west into Europe, where they again encountered other human relatives. This time, the Denisovans in Asia, and the Neanderthals already established across Europe. The Neanderthals had been in Europe for over 400,000 years. They had survived ice ages. They made tools. They buried their dead. They may have had language. And within roughly 5,000 years of Homo sapiens arriving in Europe, they were gone. What happened is still debated. Disease, competition, climate, interbreeding to absorption, perhaps all of these. But the timing is not disputed. Your ancestors arrived, and the Neanderthals disappeared. The final frontier was the Americas. For most of human prehistory, the American continents were completely cut off from the rest of the human story. No human foot had ever touched that ground. Then, sometime between 20,000 and 15,000 years ago, the dates are still being refined and pushed back. A group of humans crossed from what is now Siberia into what is now Alaska, following herds of megafauna across a land bridge called Beringia that the lower sea levels had exposed. Within a few thousand years, their descendants had reached the southern tip of South America, a distance of roughly 17,000 kilometers. They crossed deserts, jungles, mountain ranges, and river systems that had never been navigated. They did it with stone tools, fire, and accumulated ecological knowledge passed through generations of oral tradition. By around 12,000 years ago, Homo sapiens had colonized every habitable landmass on Earth except Antarctica. A species that had nearly gone extinct 195,000 years ago now covered the planet. No other large mammal in the history of life on Earth has achieved anything remotely close to this. But here is what that journey cost. Everywhere your ancestors went, megafauna disappeared. Mammoths, giant ground sloths, cave bears, woolly rhinoceroses. The evidence increasingly points to human hunting pressure, combined with climate change, as the driver of a mass extinction that reshaped the ecology of every continent. Your ancestors did not arrive in new lands as gentle wanderers. They arrived as the most effective predators the planet had ever produced. And the animals that had evolved with no fear of bipedal hunters paid the price. The journey of ancient humans is not simply a story of triumph. It is a story of extraordinary resilience and extraordinary destruction, often carried out simultaneously by the same people, following the same imperative that every living thing follows: survive, find food, keep moving. And here is the part that should stay with you. That imperative is still in you. The restlessness that makes it hard to stay in one place too long. The pull toward the horizon, toward what is over the next hill, toward the unknown edge of the map. Researchers studying what psychologist Scott Barry Kaufman calls the exploration drive have found that the human brain has a dedicated reward system for novelty seeking. A system that releases dopamine not just when you find something good, but when you discover something new. That system was not built for supermarkets or career planning. It was built for the open steppe, for the coastline that stretched beyond where anyone had ever walked, for the mountain pass that might lead to water or might lead to nothing. Your ancestors crossed continents on foot because that system would not let them stop. Tonight, When you feel that pull, when you open a map or a booking site, or just stand at a window looking out at where you could go, that is not wanderlust. That is 300,000 years of inherited momentum still running in you, pointing toward the next horizon that your ancestors never quite reached. They walked the whole world to get you here. And some part of you has never stopped walking.